Welcome everyone to the Badge and Beyond. On this episode, we're going to take what's happened very shockingly around the world, which was the assassination attempt at Trump, to talk about close personal protection and sort of the situations that occur surrounding protecting someone of high value or someone of notoriety or anyone of level of importance that can afford a decent little secret service or having a very sort of highly trained bodyguard contingent. So Anthony is someone who has played that kind of role, including as auspicious victim, patient, client, whatever you want to call him, as our illustrious Prime Minister or former Prime Minister. I thought it'd be a good idea to jump into, what is close personal protection? There's a lot of sort of different ideas. When you watch movies, watching The Bodyguard, is that what you do? Did you sing to the Prime Minister, or did they sing to you? So I think maybe if you want to enlighten us on the actual world of close personal protection in its context, both in Australia and around the world.
Well, look, let me start by saying one of the most frustrating things I've seen after this attempt was the number of supposed experts coming out that really had spent their time working in front of a bank or a chemist warehouse, and then they become consultants and experts and they're on TV talking through their hat. I want to say I've not only done the close personal protection stuff, but we run our own security company as well, and we specialise in close personal protection and executive protection, so we have a fair bit of experience in this space. Additionally, there's a whole bunch of risk assessment that goes around it. And in addition to that, I've done work with shooting operations as well as having done some long-range shooting myself, which is out to about 1 kilometre. So, and I'm not in any way saying that I'm a sniper or I'm expert, but what I am saying is I have a higher level of knowledge than the general person, and seemingly more than the average person I'm seeing on TV talk about some of this stuff. But before we get into that, yes, let's get into close personal protection, executive protection, and what that looks like and the differences. I think, and you've seen this a million times, same as me, in that when we're dealing with clients for close personal protection, a lot of them have this concept that the individual needs to be like a Jason Bourne type person, and they're like jumping into action, karate chopping this person, shooting this person, dropping that guy with headshots, this, that, and the other, and effectively they're taking bullets left, right, and centre. My opinion, and that of most people that have a reasonable understanding of this world, is if you've gotten to a place where you have to get in front of a bullet for your principle, you've screwed up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in the industry that are nothing more than bouncers that do a 4-day course and say, look at me now, I'm a bodyguard. Like, no, you can be big and you can know how to fight a little bit, but the ability to be a bodyguard requires a very good understanding of teamwork, medical. You need to be able to know advanced first aid. You need to be able to foresee risks, and your planning needs to be off the chart. If you do not have good planning skills and an ability to adapt to changes quickly and an understanding of how an environment creates or detracts from risk factors, you're no good at this job. For us, one of the key factors I look for of the people we hire is ex-military and ex-law enforcement, because they've had that experience. They have almost like a sixth sense of when something's going to go bad. They recognise things that are going to happen before they occur, and they know how to extract their principle as well.
But even on that, when you're saying ex-law enforcement, not necessarily because they've, been employed as police officers.
No.
They have to be specialists in that space.
That's right, yeah. To give you an understanding, for the dignitary protection course here in New South Wales, you have to be a sworn police officer with so many years experience. Then you go to effectively an interview phase where they have a preference for people that are, you have to be physically fit, like it's above the entry requirements for the cops. At a minimum, you've got to be able to do certain amounts of carry heavy things, swimming, running in certain time periods, beat tests, all the rest of that. They do have a preference, I think, or they used to, for people with a martial arts background. And effectively from then, you've got years of experience in the cops. Then you do a minimum 3-week course, 2 weeks of that on a military base with sometimes military trainers as well. And then you're out on a week scenario training, which is effectively 2 to 3 days worth of planning and 2 days worth of operations.
Yeah.
Simulated, but in real time, real life. I remember when we did it, we were taking like one of the supervisors from the dignitary protection unit. We'd taken them to like on ferry trips and to Luna Park and to Taronga Zoo, and people are looking at this guy who's just a sergeant. I'm like, wow, who's that guy? He's got like like 5 guys walking around there. But it is.
But it's a key thing, right? The optics.
Optics.
Like considering that, and I think that's where it's sort of. I always draw the example of, think of your high-end American rapper, and his security contingent's always the big massive guys like in a circle, like a force field, walking around and just keeping everyone back. And I'm like, dude, do you reckon they can run? Like something's happening. There's that, and it's the optics of what that looks like.
Yep.
Secret Service people don't look like that at all.
No.
Right?
No.
And then you've got the people that have like the royal families and all different stuff. These people are, as you said, a lot more, how can I say it? A lot more law enforcement type in the way that they look. And they're definitely, it's more about keeping a close, like a lower profile. And there's just eyes everywhere.
That's right.
And that's what do you want here? Do you want the bouncer looking massive guy, for the optics? Or do you want a bunch of people in tuxedos sort of... You tend to be taken more seriously. That makes sense. Because you're like, what's behind this?
Yeah. And look, I think people don't understand just the difficulties in doing good protection work.
Yeah.
For example, if you've got a dignitary, you've got to know, say they've got 15 different engagements during the day. And that is not necessarily uncommon. It's quite common for them to, when you've got a dignitary, they're here to do meetings, they're here to do meet and greets and all these other publicity things, as well as their high-end political things. They're going from meeting to meeting to meeting. And then, of course, they'll throw in that thing that's just, left field. And you're like, all of a sudden, the agenda says this, and they say, no, cut that, I don't want to go there, I want to go here. And you're like, okay, we don't know anyone there, we've got to set this up. So you've got to be able to think on your feet. But not only that, you have to know if that person comes out of this building from this meeting, which side of the car do they get in, because they need to get out on the right side, the correct side of the car when they get to the next location, right? You've got to know who's going to crack the door here, who's sitting in what position. You've got to have someone work the route beforehand. So someone needs to have driven that route minutes before to tell them if there's any issues. And then you've got to have someone at the next location to pick that up and walk them through and get them done. And then that's constantly evolving and moving. And look, I remember when we had APEC, the American contingent was unreal. I've never seen anything like it. And what you see the motorcade, but I mean, you're talking about, they always have a counter assault team. So in the Trump attempt, you saw guys with CAT written on there, like, little SWAT looking guys, and they weren't little, but SWAT looking guys, they've got CAT, that's counter assault team. Yep. You have guys that are basically a CBR team. So he used to have a truck that followed him to make sure that if anything happened that was potentially like a chemical, biological, or radiological impact, they would run out and extract him with special suits. They had jammers, they had counter snipers, they had all the rest of this stuff. Like, it's huge. Now, we're in Australia, we're not in the States. So what we have on our Prime Minister is vastly different. We have, in New South Wales, we have a contingent of federal police and state police that work together. Sometimes they work really well. Sometimes there's a little bit of, trying to think of the polite word.
Sibling rivalry?
Yeah. There's a little bit of, we're better than you, no, we are kind of thing. And for anybody that doesn't know, the feds and the state cops, we don't always get along. Not that they're not good people, not that they're, crap at all or anything else. We just, sometimes don't see eye to eye. But from that, what you get is this, our team for the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister here in Australia travels daily in one car with one chase car and an advance, right? And I'm not going to go into what's in each of those cars and things like that. But you see the president cruise around, their motorcade will be like 20 cars long.
Yeah.
Our Prime Minister kicking through town with like just 2 cars. Blink and you'd miss it. You wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
But the skill set required of an operative to be super observant, to be able to be quite articulate and speak well to the principal, the person you're protecting, to manage things diplomatically, because your job in that is not only to protect them, but it's to protect their reputation. Yep. So you can't create a scene in front of the media or anybody else. You should not be impeding your principal at all. You should almost be seen and not heard, and almost always you want to be so fluid that you're not even noticed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's vastly different, like you said, to the big beefy bouncer / wannabe bodyguard types that you see so often.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is everybody decided to come out, and because it's so well captured in the age of social media now, all you see is like a million angles and so many different mobile phones that are capturing different points of the rally, right? And so everyone's got an opinion. How long did it take for this person to be engaged? How come by reporting it to this police officer, why wasn't something done? All this kind of stuff. How long did things take? And without diving into conspiracy theories and maybe not conspiracy theories, I know from looking back to when we had celebrities come out and we were sort of providing that level of protection for them as they were in our areas. Sometimes things are really just sloppy because poor communication.
Well, that was something I was going to touch on. What I saw, reading between the lines of those agencies, so in the States you had Secret Service, you had state police, you had local police.
Yeah.
I guarantee none of them were on the same channel with each other.
Yeah.
There may have been someone coordinating, but the team, if someone had said from the state police, there's a shooter on the roof, and they communicated that via radio, do you think the Secret Service guys on the shoulder of Mr. Trump wouldn't have grabbed him and taken him off stage immediately? It's because they're not on the same channel. They're not hearing the same thing. They don't get that free flow of information. Yet, organisations, we often see this compartmentalisation. You don't get our comms. No. We're on our comms channel. You can call the coordinator and they'll organise, because we're G14 Black Ops classified, you can't know about that stuff.
Yeah.
But what it actually does is create danger.
Yeah.
You now have this point of, okay, who do they report to? Because I guarantee that the local cops would have either tried to have gone to state police or Secret Service, but then someone else is running block going, oh no, that's our jurisdiction, that's us, you can't tell us what to do. There's all this back and forth of information over here when the risk is imminent, and the guys up here had no idea.
Yep.
The guys around the stage had no idea that anything was happening until after that shot. Yet there is clearly, people make a good point that there was time to do something before the shot was taken. But I think that downfall has been in the communication, and there's a level of complacency that becomes apparent, because how often has Trump been doing speeches?
Yeah.
Like every second day?
Yep.
He's out and about constantly. I honestly would have thought, it's not surprising to me that someone's taken a shot at Donald Trump because he is so polarizing, but I just thought it was going to happen years ago. Right, I really thought it was going to happen years ago. So by now, I'm like, no one's going to do that. Surely, if it was going to be done, it would have been done.
Yeah.
And that complacency sets in amongst the team. But there's also resourcing issues.
Yeah.
He's not the president. He's not even a candidate yet, because they've only just formally, at the time of recording this, they've only just formally announce him as their candidate, and they're running into the election. But at that point in time, he wasn't. He wasn't formally nominated. So there's different protocols that come into place as to what levels of protection you get. And even though he's a former president and always gets protection, it's not at the same level as the president. So then you have this issue of, all right, how many buildings can we secure with what we've got?
Yeah.
How many people are they willing to give us to do that? When the threat level now is quite high because you know someone's tried to do it and he's now nominated as the candidate. But prior to that, he's a former president, might be running, might not be. No imminent threats from what they know. Like, they haven't come out and said, look, we knew of this guy beforehand and things like that. So the number of resources would come down. Now, any protection specialist will tell you that an outdoor rally like that was simply ludicrous. Every cop I know that was in this space, every military person, anybody that knows this stuff prefers an indoor location because it is that much easier to control. You own that space. You own that territory. You can vet the people coming in easily. You know exactly where the markers are, where you can have good overwatch positions. You don't have to worry so much about sloping roofs. I'll get to that. And you can also have the bomb dogs come through and sweep and all those other things and check the location and have it locked down so you own that space. It is completely locked.
And I think also what gets forgotten, there's a lot to be said on what the client wants.
Yes.
Right? And we've seen that in the private space where you're like, here's all the things we believe you should do. Then the client's like, no, I only want one person here. I don't want to dress like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then again, he or she wants optics, right? It plays into the theatre. But then there's also like, they want a level of accessibility to the people.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? There's all this stuff that happens. And I think one example I had, which, for me, straight away came to my mind when I saw what happened with the attempted assassination, was we had good old Ricky Martin came to Australia.
Martin.
Yeah, came to Australia for the first time years back.
For some of the people listening and watching to this, we might have to explain who he is.
Well, you can look him up. Right? Kind of shows our age, but he was kind of a big deal, right? And now he's a judge on like different shows. So he's still around, but when he was at the peak, at the height of his...
Did he have a peak?
Well, he did. And then, of course, he came to... Where else would you come? You'd come to Australia only at the height of stardom. Anyway, he decided to come and visit the main shopping centre of our command at the time, right? And I was doing other duties at the time, so I was just dressed in a suit, no uniform, blah, blah, blah. I was armed. And I remember the supervisor got the information relatively late because he wasn't going to come to this. And, he went to other things and decided, no, they're gonna bring him in, and they will there's a juxtaposition on times and timetables and all this kind of crap. Anyway, he picks the day, and mate, it's a sellout. Like everyone turns up to the shopping centre. They didn't expect it to be what it did, and we were already considering like, I don't know if the shopping centre is conducive to large crowds. Yeah. And where he wanted to do the performance in the main kind of gallery. So then there's people now on multiple levels that can watch him perform. Now, we weren't thinking assassination attempts, right? It was more about crowd control and a lot of teenagers going nuts.
Yeah.
Probably skipping school for it and whatever. Anyway, so I come in as like an assistant, as an extra resource, because of my relationship with the shopping centre, because I used to do crime prevention work during those days. So I know the security really well and just know the layout of the shopping centre quite well. So I'm liaising mainly with the security that's already existing, and they've bolstered security. Now he comes with his own security contingent, as you'd expect, but nowhere near as much as I expected. Like I think it was like 2 people.
Yeah.
And again, he was an international star at the time, like really quite popular. Anyway, I recall at the time my wife and her mum are kind of fans of him as well. And I remember this day really well because it was her birthday. It was around her birthday time, my wife's birthday time.
Why do I get the sense this is going to a high-level, unprofessional...
You're going to love this. Anyway, so I've got this in the back of my mind. And so I knew she was going to probably try and turn up as well and watch, and watch him perform. So they decided to change it to no longer being a performance, and now it's just signing, and like a meet and greet.
Yep.
Which is kind of worse because now
It is, yeah.
you know, it's lines of people are coming.
And everybody's jostling for position because they know he's not going to stay there all day.
Correct. So and back in this is the day of signing CDs, and you know what I mean. Anyway, so Gen CDs are like before. Anyway, so anyway, again, huge lines, whatever, and so I go down to the stage area, and I'm just monitoring the access to his table, right? And I remember he's leaning over and asks one of the security something. Security walk over to me like he wants to go to the bathroom, you know. And we've already we've put him in a place where the nearest bathroom is really close and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, cool, whatever. And I'm just relaying it back to the rest of the police that are working there. But they're at distant points and they're on crowd control, right?
Yep.
He's got his own contingent. So off we go. He gets up, he walks right past me by himself, and he's going into the bathroom, public bathroom. And I'm like, first of all, why did no one go in before him?
Yeah, because the bathroom should have been cleared.
Yeah. And then secondly, is anyone going in?
Yep.
So I'm like, I relay back on the radio, none of his security. They're like, yeah, his security up. They've gone up somewhere else. Okay. And then I'm like, Sarge, what do you want to do? He goes, yeah, can you go? So then it's just me and Ricky Martin in the bathroom. Now that could be an opening to all kinds of scenarios. But what ended up happening is I worked out, so I closed the door after him so no one else comes in. But not an ideal situation for anybody.
No,
right?
No, it's a terrible situation.
Anyway, and then when it's time to finish, open the door and I look, and again, there's just no one guarding the door. Like, what are you doing? And you think to yourself, like, in this day and age, well, back then, that's really lax security.
And what I've seen paint the picture for me, when you're at that bathroom, is it like a corridor to the bathroom, there's nowhere else outside of that?
Yeah, you're stuck.
Yeah, so you're in a dead end.
Yeah.
Terrible.
If the crowd want to rush in, well, I can't hold that door, right? At the end of the day, it is what it is. Anyway, he's picked up on this is not a great scenario for him, right? Anyway, when we finish the event, we go upstairs and he pulls me aside and he goes, would you like a photo? You know, it's not his accent, I don't know.
No, come on, I want to hear the accent, bro. Let's go with the accent.
Would you like a photo? Anyway, he pulls me aside. And he
Worst Ricky Martin
no,
ever.
terrible. I can't. And he says to me, thank you for picking up. He goes, I'm not very happy with, sort of what happened. And he was like, oh, anything I can do for you? I go, hey, listen, could you do me a favour? It's my wife's birthday. If you could call her and wish her a happy birthday, she'd lose her mind, right? So he's like, yeah, all right, how good's this? I'm going to get great points for this one. Call the phone, doesn't answer.
Oh!
Call the phone again, doesn't answer. I'm like, oh, well, you missed out. Ricky Martin could have said happy birthday to you. That's the end of my story. But basically what I'm saying to you is sometimes you think there's conspiracies and things are really bad, but sometimes it's just really poor communication and a slack job where you're under-resourced or your client has decided to go off on his own tangent and make their own decision on what they think is necessary.
And the thing about this, the professionals in this space, and I mean the professionals, move with such flow and ease and they make it look easy. So when something doesn't go right, it looks really clunky and awful. And I'm not even talking about what happened with Donald Trump. I'm just talking about generally. I remember I was the advance for the Prime Minister, went to this massive event and there was a media kind of scrum forming. But on the advance, honestly, the advance does a pretty good job because you get to be at most of the things, but you leave early, you run the route, you give them clearances, you do whatever, and then you set up in the next job. So I'm doing that and I'm on comms and I'm listening and I'm like, okay, I'm out in the car, I'm by myself. I go, I clear it, like, route's clear, guys, good to go. I'm set up because we're only like 5-10 minutes away, the next job, next location. Prime Minister comes out, it's a poo fight. There's media all around him, following him. He's nearly being tripped up. All the guys are trying to, like, the AFP staff and New South Wales police are here and there and they're jostling for position, trying to get him through and stop people from sticking cameras in his face. There's 2 cars lined up ready to go, but he had to walk to the cars. They get to the cars, new driver. Now, one of the key points for being a driver is you have to know that car. Well, he's never had that car before because they'd recently swapped cars to a different style of car. So there was like an issue with central locking of when you put in park and when you put in drive and how it's set up and all the rest of it. So they put the Prime Minister in the car and he goes to go, and the state guys have jumped in the car behind, but there's supposed to be a Fed guy that gets in as well. But he doesn't. He misses out because they've changed gears, the doors have locked, and they're trying to work it out, but the Prime Minister's going. You've got to go with the Prime Minister. So leave the federal cop there. Now, you can imagine...
That wouldn't have went down well.
That didn't go down well when there's already a little bit of rivalry. And they were upset, the feds were upset because a state guy just happened to be in position to crack the door for the Prime Minister's car. But the feds are like, we need to do that. It's like, mate, it's whoever's there, right? Like, let's just calm down. Did he get in the car? Yes. Was there any issues? No. Does it matter if he's got an AFP badge or a New South Wales police badge? Not to the Prime Minister, it doesn't. But because that happened with cracking the door, that was a kerfuffle and a half. When I got back to the office to have my lunch, because Prime Minister was going back to his offices, and they're like, okay, go take your lunch break. Whenever you're doing close personal protection, when you've got an opportunity for toilet, coffee or food,
you
take it. Because you do not know. I've done days that started at like 4:30 in the morning and finished at 1, and you will back up again for kind of like 4 or 5 in the morning. Like wherever they go, you go. So you don't know. But I went back to the office and like, what the hell was that? I'm like, I wasn't there. I didn't do it. I don't know anything about it. I'm just the advance. Woo! But yeah, look, things can go wrong. And that's just little things. Even when you see, for example, a Prime Minister or someone that's a dignitary, and you see them on the gaffs and they trip over a stair or something, your job in close personal protection is to prevent that from happening. So you should be close enough to be able to grab them to stop them from falling over, to save their dignity, because it looks a lot better if one of their people just lift them up by the arm to help them get their footing, then they spill and roll all over the ground and then injure themselves and do whatever. And I think that's the thing, that a lot of people just think close personal protection is stop a bullet, fight the bad guy. Now, your job is to take the bullet, get the person out of there before anything happens, but protect their reputation, be the eyes and the ears. Now, if we focus more on the Trump assassination, I think there's so many failures there, but I'm not sure if it's complacency, incompetence, or just circumstance. Donald Trump has already mentioned how he'd prefer to be outside. He likes being outside, right? Because you can have so many more people, you get so much more reach. But as we said, that is a terrible position. Let's consider that communication aspect. Two-way radios. Who's on what band? They're saying there was actually cops inside that location. Okay, well, if you're inside that location, the last thing you expect, and I think this is complacency, is that someone's going to climb on the roof of the place you're manning. If you hear something on the roof, your first thing isn't, that's got to be a sniper. You're probably like, animal, someone's thrown something on there, or is it one of our guys? Is it one of the Secret Service guys? Because if you're from a different agency and you're not on comms, you're assuming that one of the other agencies has done something they shouldn't have. Or is just out of place.
That's the thing. That's a very good point. It's not unfathomable that you're manning a point and you see someone who has a long arm, for example, and he's positioned. That's one of the military snipers, or do you know what I'm saying? It's not out of the realm of possibility, because how brazen could someone be that in your perimeter, right in front of you, is on a.
That's right.
So there's
and you think
too.
Because you know the security plan, you're like, so they've got counter sniper teams. So you assume no one's going to go against a counter sniper team, surely, and the snipers would have called it and they would have shot him and done whatever. but you don't know what they're seeing and what else is going on because you don't have the full picture. You don't know if they're distracted by something else. You don't know if there's multiple people. But in your head, you're just like, we don't have to worry about the roof because the counter sniper team will see him. We've got people around. They would have notified us. Nothing's come to us yet. So there's that point. One of the interesting things for me was the fact that they did leave it unprotected in that way of, when I did my course, they said to me, an amateur sniper, amateur with little more than a basic rifle and scope, can do 500 metres. They can shoot 500 metres relatively accurately. Now, I went from being a basic shooter, and I did some training in a very short period of time, and I went from shooting 100, 200 metres, and we are talking about, I think, 135 metres, they reckon, for the shooter to trump. So the average person can shoot, go to the range and shoot 100 metres. But I went from 100, 200 metres out to 1,000 metres.
Yeah.
With a little bit of training and practice. So that does highlight the significant failure. So the fact is, if someone like me with a little bit of experience can shoot out to 1,000 metres,
Yep.
anything within 200 metres was obviously an issue.
Yeah.
It should have been locked down.
Yep.
But again, it comes down. The problem you have with risk is always present, and you try to mitigate it. But so many times there's people with budgetary restraints, and people are like, yeah, but what's the likelihood that's going to happen? And everybody has a belief that, well, since it hasn't happened before, it's not going to happen again, or it's not going to happen. So they don't donate the resources to it or dedicate the resources to it. And sometimes that's funding, sometimes that's people, sometimes it's both. Also, counter sniper teams and people that are trained to work at heights, like on a sloping roof, just don't grow on trees.
Yeah.
And the Secret Service, when I'd had a connection with them, they were very strict on 8 hours. So they would bring out a team and you're on day shift, afternoon shift, night shift. And it didn't matter where you were, they'd rotate you out. So you've got these guys that, how long have they been set up for? What other rallies have they gone to? Like, where was Donald Trump before that? And you can't just leave the counter sniper team from there, pick up and move to there. This counter sniper team has to be in place beforehand. You don't know where he's going after that. Well, how many snipers do you have?
Yeah.
So, and each team either has 2 shooters or a shooter and a spotter. So again, resourcing is an issue. But yes, should you have locked down that by any other means? 100%.
I think there was a lot of online or trolling or criticism of the actual security contingent that was there, running in to cover him and all that, and struggling to find the holster and all that kind of stuff. And again, it's important. Look, again, fair's fair, right? It's important to realise these are scenarios where that's probably their first time ever.
Yes.
Active shooter.
Yes.
Right? First time ever. That rattles you, man. That's not something, And I'll tell you right now, it's not the most wonderful feeling to feel like you're in the line of fire.
Yes.
Right? And in this day and age, it's not like I'm saving, Julius Caesar, this amazing, figure that's like leading my nation and blah, blah, blah. It's, again, some very wealthy, loud, opinionated person. It's the United States of America, for God's sake. And so there's plenty of those. And you're asking, whoever to, forget their own life.
Yes.
And everyone's going to say, oh, but that's the job. That's what they signed up for. You can sign up for whatever the hell you want, and you'll do years and years of training and simulated scenarios. But when you hear a real bullet and you see real blood, you can't always predict how your human response will be, because your body's instinct is to survive.
I agree, and I both agree and disagree. For me, I agree with you that you don't know how. No one knows what they're going to do until they're in that situation.
Yep.
But I feel like, first of all, I do want to highlight that what I've seen with the trolls is there's been a lot of idiot trolls coming out like, this is what happens when you have diversity inclusions and women and this and that. I'm like, you know what? No, just because it was a female they got doing that it's not because she's female, right? Really what it showed me is either those individuals weren't as highly trained as they should have been or didn't have the experience. One of the big things that I really rate New South Wales Police for when it comes to any of this kind of work, as opposed to the feds, and no disrespect to the feds, but you've had to work on the street. Now, if you've worked the street, you've been in any number of tussles, you've come across violent situations, you learn to work under stress. There's a big difference between working in an environment that is a training scenario where you know nothing's going to hurt you really, to, this is it. This could end me right here. That experience hardens you and allows you to act with a lot more clarity, a lot more confidence, and to move with a better flow and dexterity. Simple gun manipulation skills and getting something into the holster and out of the holster, she shouldn't have been trying to put her firearm back in the holster from what I've seen, because no one knew where the threat was coming from at that time, right? You don't know how many threats there are. But then, having said that, yes, it's brand new to her. There's brand new to the whole team because, let's face it, there hasn't been a proper assassination attempt like that for a long time. And I think complacency has set in. And it is one of those things, though, that, look, you look at how we treat guys for special forces. They're out there training. For example, our tactical operations unit guys will shoot pretty much every other day. And they do it so that it's second nature. So when they have to, it's done. Okay, whether you like Donald Trump or not, and I personally, after working with politicians, had my doubts about whether I'd want to jump in front of a bullet for some of these guys. The thing is, you're not protecting the person, you're protecting democracy. And if people have a belief that they can challenge the order of how we run our world of democracy and free speech and, everybody having a right to choose, which is effectively what we're doing when we vote, that's what you're trying to protect. And that's the difference, right?
That's the thing. I think you are a product of your training.
Yes.
And that's what I think would also should have been the criticism.
Yes.
As opposed to the individuals.
There's been some terrible. I think the training has been the failure there, and the lack of constant recertification and accreditation. Specifically for me, those guys looking at some of that team, I was like, you look like you've eaten a few too many donuts and haven't hit the treadmill recently. There's some of those things where you have to be on your game physically. If you're going to be up to protect someone else's life, you need to be on point with your physical fitness.
And what I don't know about them is this can it be a casual gig on the side? I don't know how it works over there. Would this be their full-time?
I think for Secret Service, yes, I believe so. Remembering too, though, Secret Service have an investigation arm as well. And kind of like AFP, they have a protective service kind of arm where they're more in a uniform kind of space, just protecting the grounds and things like that. So you don't know where that person's moved in from and if they've come from another duty type. But still, if you're on the shoulder, if you're in the inner perimeter, you need your ace guys and girls.
That's what I'm kind of alluding to. It didn't translate for me that way.
Do
you know what I mean?
It didn't. They didn't look like. And honestly, I think some of that team looked like they were right on the money. So they were in quick. They got him down. They were trying to cover up, and they got the call. You could hear them saying, "Okay, shooters down." So they want to move. Now, one of the things for me is they don't extract him as fast as I would have liked him to be extracted. But I think that's more Trump.
Well, you hear the audio.
You hear the audio, right?
Wait. Hey.
I am both First of all, I can't imagine that that's what anybody comes up with, but I am just amazed at the ability of someone to have that happen and to recognise a political opportunity.
Yeah.
Because any normal person would have gone, happy to go, people, get me out of here. That guy's like, no, this is my new platform.
Yeah, because the thing is, how do you know it's just one?
Exactly.
Like, what told you the threat is over?
Yeah.
Because that one guy's out of action.
That's right.
Well, it could have been 7 more. How do you know?
Could have been, someone wearing something in the crowd,
And he could have been the diversion, for example. Then there's the next thing, and there's a device.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And look, it could have been. They could have been someone aimed at the cars, ready to go. Like you don't know. That's the thing, right? Like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
There's so many ifs and buts, but we have seen. Do you remember the chasers?
Mm-hmm.
The incident with the chasers
Mm-hmm. It was
at APEC.
Yeah.
It was at APEC.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, the inside story of that was, and this is where it comes down to planning and small issues making big screw-ups. So I was working on another dignitary, but that dignitary was coming after the Americans arrived. And all of a sudden, one morning, we're there trying to do our prep, and they're like, sorry, guys, we need you to go out and man gates. And I'm like, what do you mean, man gates? They're like, I'm dignitary protection. That's like a uniform thing. They're like, yeah, uniform screwed it. We need you guys to do it. So here I am with one of the other guys from my team out the front of the Intercon Hotel where the Americans are staying, manning gates. How that came to pass was night shift. The Americans come in the night before. Night shift have all the gates that we had around for APEC, all around the city and through the different corridors, travel corridors, had padlocks. They all had keys. Do you think night shift gave the keys to day shift? Nope. So all these guys have just walked off the point with the keys to the gate. A motorcade wants to get out and go, and they can't and they're held in place, which is the worst thing for a motorcade.
Yeah.
A motorcade should never stop effectively. And they're held up for 45 minutes because no one had a key to open the gates. And then the uniform guys were trying to hold up motorcades to check them. And then when they weren't holding them up to check them, they didn't have keys. And then they were letting the wrong people through, and they're like, oh, we need people that are just better. So they wanted the Dig Pro guys to be close at least to those locations. I remember one of the heads of Dig Pro driving through with his car, just making sure that everybody opened the gates. I was like,
wow.
It is so stupid, yet such a simple thing you wouldn't think you'd have to announce it, but it was. Now, where Chaser came in was, effectively after that incident, everybody got told, when you see a motorcade, let them through. Don't check them. They're a motorcade. Let them through. I don't know if the Chaser knew that or not, but they've just happened after days of this being the case where they set up their own motorcade and drive through, and everybody's like, well, it's a motorcade. Do we not? It doesn't look 100%, but who else is driving a motorcade?
Yeah.
So you don't want to be that guy that gets busted. So here they end up, and honestly, they were probably lucky because I know there were counter sniper teams on the rooftops. I've heard some stories about Secret Service tactics, and they did not care about civilians or other professionals. So yeah, but it's funny how a simple thing can go so wrong. For the Trump assassination attempt, though, the key thing for me was the laser finder.
Yes.
Someone comes to a rally with a laser rangefinder, and you don't prevent that guy from going in, and you don't put surveillance on him. Now, this is the thing. Good close personal protection should have counter surveillance and surveillance operatives working so they know. You should have... That guy has literally got something there to show you how far his bullet has to travel so he can calculate timings of flight and ballistic coefficients that he might need if he's got to choose his weapon.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that's cool, off you go. But this is the problem with having the lowest paid individual working at the gates, at the edge of the perimeter. And that one person, outside of all the other failings, probably he creates or she creates the failings well beyond that.
Yeah, just cascades after that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because all you had to do was stop that guy, there's usually an investigative team whenever you have these things somewhere about, and say, detain this guy and start looking into him.
Yep.
What do we know? Because the parents are now saying he'd done a lot of weird stuff, and they'd notified other law enforcement bodies.
Yeah.
So if you had done like a minute's worth of digging on that guy at that time, everything changes.
Yeah.
It's utterly crazy.
Yeah. And that's the thing, So and even for us, I know, we really despise the armchair
Critics, yeah.
critics and experts. So we're, desperately not wanting to be part of that scenario. But, at the end of the day, the level of training and the experiences, you can automatically see there are some glaring series of events that as I said, have caused that cascade of failures. Well, Anthony, that was brilliant. Thank you very much for that. It's one of those things where it's good to have that experience, because you can sort of speak on it in doing close personal protection, because it really is its own science.
It is. And look, the things I took away from what I saw is that level of complacency, the lack of training, paying attention to the guy on the ground. Kudos to the counter snipers, because they were the ones that dealt with the problem. Not easy to, even though it's only, say, 100, I think it was 140, 150 metres from them. You're on a sloping roof, you're trying to set up, you don't know what else is going on, you've got comms running, you've got to take into account, like, what's the background, who else is going to be up on the roof, windage, lines of sight, all the rest of those things. What might be, is there branches or something else in the way? They did a very good job to pull that off. The average shooter probably wouldn't have pulled that off. And I know they're average shooters versus someone that's highly professional, but they did a good job. I don't want to detract from the team on the ground, because there was a lot of people doing a lot of good work that day. And I do feel very sorry for the people that were the one fatality there was, and their family and the people injured from that. But mine isn't to second guess these people or to really go after them. It's interesting to see how that's happened. I'm not sure if today I heard the head of the Secret Service resigned, and I feel like there's a fair bit of scapegoating in that.
Always is. Yeah.
How much better is that person now to lead potentially after you've made a mistake, right? Or after someone on your team has made a mistake? How much more vigilant are you after that? And I don't feel like that meets the end that they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
But it is a complex world. Don't ever think that close personal protection is easy and it's just walking where someone else goes. That's not it. There's a lot of factors to take into account. And look, hopefully this doesn't happen again. No doubt it will at some point in time somewhere in the world, but I hope that at least there's a good result from it and we don't have any fatalities.
Yeah, well said.
All right, well, absolute pleasure being here today. Thank you for listening, people. Remember to like, share, subscribe. We've been really happy with the comments coming through, guys. Please send them through. We're going to do a couple of snippets. Also to answer some of your comments, because you don't want to hear them in long form here. And who are we sponsored by today, Danny?
Our wonderful great tech partners, IC Technology. That's ictechnology.com.au for all things managed IT services.
And of course, our own company, you can find us at privateinvestigatorsydney.com.au. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.